The Zorathian research station floated silently above the emerald clouds of planet Valira 3. Its sleek towers shimmered in the sunlight, casting long shadows over the dense alien forests below. For centuries, the Zorathians had studied life across the galaxy, observing species, collecting samples, and cataloging behaviors. Their minds were precise, their emotions contained. Lyra Vela, a xenobiologist of some renown, had spent her life observing creatures of all kinds, but nothing in her experience prepared her for the arrival of a human. The transport doors hissed as they opened. A man stepped through, tall and strong, yet unarmed and unassuming. His dark hair was slightly messy, and his eyes, human eyes, shone with curiosity rather than fear. Lyra's sensors recorded every detail: his posture, the way he moved, the micro-expressions that crossed his face. Humans were rare, and only a few had ever been seen in the Zorathian system. This one, Alex Mercer, was completely unstudied, untouched by alien research protocols. Lyra approached cautiously, her multi-limbed frame moving with elegance. She observed him like a scientist should, but there was something in her chest that made her pause, a strange flutter she could not categorize. The Zorathians did not feel flutters. They did not feel desire in the way organic creatures did. Their emotions were organized, predictable, and categorized. Yet, as Alex met her gaze, something inside her felt different. "Welcome to Valira Station," she said, her voice precise and calm. "I am Dr. Lyra Vela. You are here for study and observation." Alex's lips curved in a slight smile. "Study me, huh? I guess that's fair. I'm Alex Mercer. And you are Dr. Lyra Vela, xenobiologist. Your arrival is of great interest to my department." She inclined her head, noting the human tendency for informal gestures. Humans smiled more than any other species she had observed, and the meaning of their smiles was complex. Not just expression, but emotion. Alex's eyes flicked over the sleek alien equipment, the tall towers and the strange lights blinking on consoles. "Impressive," he said. "You all really like your gadgets, huh?" Lyra recorded his speech patterns, his tone, and even the cadence of his voice. It was warm, full of subtle inflections and distinctly human. The station had been designed for alien minds, efficient, silent, and precise. Alex's presence introduced an entirely new variable. "Your species has remarkable adaptability," Lyra said, her voice smooth but tinged with curiosity. "I have read reports, but first-hand observation will be more instructive." Alex raised an eyebrow. "Adaptability, huh? I like that word. But I suppose I'm just lucky sometimes." Lyra noted the humor in his voice. Humor was rare among the alien species she studied. Most avoided it, seeing it as illogical. Humans, however, seemed to wield humor as easily as breath. It intrigued her. She felt drawn to understand him, not just physically or biologically, but in the way he thought, the way he lived, and perhaps the way he felt. The initial examination was simple. Alex stood on the diagnostic platform while Lyra's instruments scanned his body. They measured bone density, muscle response, heart rate, and neural activity. Humans were fragile in some ways, but their resilience was remarkable. Alex adapted to the alien environment faster than expected, breathing the filtered air, tolerating the low gravity, and adjusting to the alien food. Lyra's sensors noted subtle shifts in his pulse as she asked questions about his past, his experiences, and his species' culture. Humans carried emotion in every answer, even when speaking logically. That made them difficult to study purely scientifically. "You are recording all of this?" Alex asked, leaning slightly forward. "All observations are recorded," Lyra said. "Every response, every micro-expression, every movement." She paused. "Even your emotional reactions are of interest. Humans experience emotions differently than most species. Touch, for example, is uniquely influential in your behavior." Alex laughed softly. "Touch, huh? You mean like a handshake or a pat on the back?" "More than that," Lyra said. "Touch conveys trust, reassurance, even empathy. Your kind uses physical contact to communicate complex feelings." Alex's eyes twinkled. "Well, I guess you'll see that firsthand." He glanced at her, and Lyra felt that strange pull again. It was irrational, unexpected, and yet undeniable. She forced herself to focus, to record, to remain professional. The day passed slowly. Alex explored the station, examined alien tools with curiosity, and asked endless questions. Lyra noted each one. His inquisitiveness was another hallmark of humanity, an insatiable need to learn, to understand, to interact. He did not fear the unknown. He embraced it. By evening, Lyra found herself walking alongside him in the station's observation deck. The room was high above the forest canopy, filled with soft light and the gentle hum of energy generators. Outside, Velyra 3's twin suns were setting, casting a golden glow over the clouds. "You all really love this view," Alex said, looking out at the alien trees and rivers. "It's beautiful," Lyra nodded. "It is. Our species values observation and reflection. We consider landscapes as data, structure, composition, energy flow." Alex smiled. "You make it sound like numbers. I think it's more than that. Beauty, it makes you feel something." Lyra recorded the statement, but she also felt it. Humans could feel deeply, she realized. Not in controlled, predictable ways like the Zorathians, but in fluid, overwhelming waves. The sensation was foreign, almost disorienting. "Do you often feel?" she asked, hesitating. The question was unusual for a Zorathian to ask another species, especially a subject. "Feel?" Alex turned to her, tilting his head. "All the time. That's kind of the point of being human. Emotions aren't just data. They're connections. With people, with the world." Lyra noted the word connection. She had observed it in humans before, but never experienced it herself. And yet, standing there, she could not deny that she felt a pull toward him, an invisible thread linking her to him. Suddenly, an alarm sounded. The sensors in the lower labs had detected a minor system fluctuation. Nothing dangerous, but enough to require attention. Alex instinctively moved toward the console. "Do you want me to help?" he asked. Lyra raised an eyebrow. "You are unfamiliar with our systems. Assistance is unnecessary." "Maybe, but sometimes fresh eyes help," Alex said, placing his hands gently on the console. He adjusted settings, traced the energy flow, and immediately identified the issue. His hands moved with precision, yet there was a gentleness, a care in his touch. Lyra's pulse sensors reacted, not from fear, but from something new. Observation alone could not explain it. She had studied thousands of species, yet this reaction was unfamiliar. Her mind cataloged the phenomenon, but her body was responding differently. The fluctuation resolved. The light stabilized. Alex leaned back and smiled, casual and relaxed, unaware of the effect he had caused. "You humans are remarkable," Lyra said, trying to maintain composure. "Your instinctive responses, your ability to adapt, your interactions, they are unlike anything we have seen." Alex shrugged. "I just try to do what feels right. I guess that makes me remarkable." Lyra made a note. Human humility often accompanied capability, a contrast to other species that emphasized pride and skill. It was another puzzle. As night fell over Velyra 3, Lyra returned to her quarters. She recorded her observations meticulously, yet her thoughts kept drifting back to Alex. She had intended to study him objectively, to catalog his behaviors, his reactions, his physiology, but every time she remembered the way he moved, smiled, or touched the console, she felt something strange and unfamiliar in her chest. Humans were unpredictable, chaotic in ways that Zorathians could not model. And yet, there was something profoundly compelling about them. Something that drew her in not as a scientist, but as something else. She shook her head, forcing herself to focus. Tomorrow the tests would continue. Data would be collected. Observations would be made. Alex Mercer would remain a subject. Nothing more. And yet, as she closed her eyes, she felt the tiniest flicker of anticipation. A question she could not answer. Was it possible that studying him could change her on entirely? The night passed, and the stars of Velyra 3 glimmered like scattered diamonds. Somewhere, deep in the alien forest below, life moved in patterns and rhythms Lyra had spent a lifetime cataloging. And somewhere in the observation deck, Alex Mercer slept, unaware that his presence had already begun to unravel the carefully structured world of a Zorathian scientist. Tomorrow would bring study, data, and tests. But tomorrow also promised something unquantifiable, something that science could not fully measure. Something Lyra Vela was not yet ready to name, and deep inside her a spark had been lit. The morning sun of Velyra 3 rose slowly over the misty forests, casting long shadows across the research station. Lyra Vela woke early, her mind restless. Sleep had been shallow, filled with fragments of Alex's expressions. the warmth in his gestures and the subtle rhythm of his movements. She shook her head. She was a scientist. Her duty was observation, not emotion, and yet she felt drawn to him in ways that no data could explain. In the observation lab, Alex was already awake. He moved with ease, exploring the instruments as if he had done it all before. His fingers traced the edges of alien consoles with curiosity, pausing occasionally to examine a blinking light or a holographic display. "Good morning, Dr. Vela," he said, smiling. "Ready for another day of being poked and prodded?" Lyra's antennae twitched, a Zorathian gesture of mild irritation. "The purpose of today's studies is to observe your reflexes, cognitive responses, and emotional interactions under controlled conditions." Alex grinned. "Sounds official. Let's get to work." The day began with controlled experiments. Lyra had designed tests to measure Alex's reactions to various stimuli, simulated alien environments, unexpected sounds, and tactile devices that interacted with his skin. She was careful to follow protocols, recording every micro-expression, heartbeat fluctuation, and neural response. Alex participated willingly. He adjusted quickly, adapting to the alien technology with surprising skill. He laughed when a small device tickled his skin unexpectedly, and Lyra noticed something that no instrument could measure: the subtle warmth in his eyes, the ease of his gestures, the fluidity of his smile. Humans carried emotion in every motion, every glance, and every breath. Lyra's colleagues monitored the session remotely, nodding in approval at her meticulous notes. Yet she sensed that Alex's influence on her was growing. Her pulse sensors registered increases in heart rate and minor energy fluctuations whenever he came near. She tried to suppress it, reminding herself that scientific objectivity was paramount. After the tests, Alex asked to explore the station. Lyra, though hesitant, allowed it. She had seen enough to know that humans learned best through experience, observation, and interaction. They walked through corridors filled with alien flora preserved in biomes. Alex touched leaves, examined glowing fungi, and asked endless questions. "Do these plants respond to you?" he asked, brushing his fingers across a delicate frond. "They move slightly when you touch them." "They are bioresponsive," Lyra explained. "They react to stimuli in a predictable manner. Your species' ability to interact with them is unusual," Alex laughed. "Unusual? I like that word. Humans are flexible. We adjust to what we see, to what we feel. I guess that makes us interesting." Lyra noted the word carefully. Interesting. Humans were unpredictable, yes, but their adaptability was a kind of intelligence the Zorathians rarely observed. As they reached the observation deck, the twin suns were high in the sky, their golden light reflecting off the clouds. Alex paused to admire the view. "You all see beauty differently," he said softly. "For me, it's not just structure or energy flow. It's feeling something in your chest, something that makes you alive." Lyra felt a strange resonance in her chest. She could not name it, and yet she recognized it. Humans experienced the world in layers she had never considered. Data alone could not explain their connection to life. The next test involved touch, or what humans called haptics. Lyra had designed gloves that could measure pressure, skin response, and subtle muscle movements. She guided Alex through exercises, demonstrating each movement and observing his reactions. "Humans rely on touch for communication," she explained. "Your species conveys trust, reassurance, and emotion through contact. I want to measure the physiological effects of touch on your responses." Alex nodded. "I understand." "Let's do it." The exercise began. Alex's hands moved with precision, responding to her instructions. Lyra's instruments recorded data, but she noticed that her own reactions were unusual. Whenever their hands brushed, even lightly, her sensors showed energy fluctuations, subtle warmth, and an increase in attention. She tried to remain detached, but she could not ignore the pull she felt. "You seem different when you touch these devices," Lyra observed. Alex smiled gently. "Maybe I'm used to touching things with care. Humans tend to consider consequences before action. We think about the other, not just ourselves." Lyra studied him. His explanation was logical, yet it carried something more. She realized that humans did not separate thought from emotion as Zorathians did. Their actions were a blend of intellect, feeling, and instinct. By midday, Lyra found herself walking beside Alex through the lower gardens. The biomes were alive with alien insects, glowing plants, and small amphibious creatures. Alex crouched to observe a cluster of luminous fungi, pointing out patterns in their growth. You see symmetry here? He asked. It's like nature is trying to speak to us. Even if it can't, I feel like it's saying something. Lyra tilted her head. His words were poetic, though he claimed no poetry. Humans infused meaning into simple observation, and Lyra realized this was part of what drew her to him. She had intended to study him objectively, yet she found herself listening to every word, watching every movement, and feeling anticipation when he looked at her. The afternoon brought a discussion on culture. Alex asked questions about Zarathian history, art, and science. Lyra answered carefully, providing facts while observing his reactions. His curiosity was endless. He asked about their emotions, their customs, and the ways they connected or failed to connect with each other. You don't touch each other like we do, he noted. Even a handshake, a pat, or a hug carries meaning. You miss out on something important, Lyra considered his words. Touch was foreign to her species in emotional terms. Their contact was functional, not expressive. Yet watching Alex move through the world with such ease, she felt something stirring. A desire to understand, to experience, to connect. As evening approached, a sudden storm swept across the planet. The research station's shields held, but the winds rattled the outer walls and rain lashed against the observation windows. Lyra's instruments recorded the storm's energy, but Alex did not flinch. Impressive station, he said calmly, gripping the rail as the wind gusted. I like how sturdy it is. It's built to last. Lyra noticed his calmness. Other species would panic in such conditions. Humans, she realized, thrived in chaos. They could assess, adapt, and act without hesitation. The storm intensified, forcing them to return to the lab. Lyra guided Alex through emergency protocols, but he anticipated actions instinctively, offering solutions and assisting her in stabilizing the systems. You're remarkable, Lyra admitted quietly, her voice betraying the slightest hint of awe. Your instincts, your empathy, your ability to respond under pressure. It is unusual. Alex's eyes met hers. I guess humans just act. We don't overthink. We feel, we respond, and we trust ourselves and others to do what's right. Lyra's chest tightened. She had studied instinctive behaviors in thousands of species, but nothing had ever affected her this way. She found herself drawn not just to his actions, but to him, his presence, his energy, and the unmeasured warmth he exuded. When the storm finally passed, the station settled into calm. The alien sky revealed twin moons, pale and glowing against the night. Lyra and Alex stood together on the observation deck, silently watching the moons reflect on the alien forests below. I'm glad I came, Alex said softly. Even if it's for study, this place. It's amazing, and you're amazing too. Lyra's antennae twitched, a sign of confusion in her species. I am here as a scientist. My purpose is to observe. Sometimes observation leads to more, Alex said, smiling warmly. Sometimes it changes how you see the world, or the people in it. Lyra recorded his words meticulously, yet she could not deny their truth. Something within her had shifted. She had intended to study him, to understand humans objectively, and yet she felt herself leaning closer to him. Not physically, but emotionally. She could not name the sensation, only feel it. As she returned to her quarters that night, Lyra knew that the study had deepened. Alex Mercer was not merely a subject. He was a puzzle, a force, and something far beyond data. His presence challenged her understanding of emotion, connection, and desire. And for the first time, she wondered, not as a scientist, but as a being capable of feeling, what it would be like to experience a human touch, to feel what Alex Mercer felt and shared, and to let herself be changed. The stars of Valera 3 twinkled outside, silent witnesses to the beginning of something neither science nor logic could contain. The morning on Valera 3 began quietly, with soft light spilling over the alien forests below. Lyra Vela awoke with a mixture of anticipation and unease. The previous days had been full of observation, interaction, and subtle tension, and now she realized that her curiosity about Alex Mercer had evolved into something far more complex. It was no longer enough to study him objectively. She wanted to understand him, to connect with him in ways her species had never allowed. Alex was already awake, standing by the observation deck, gazing at the twin suns. When he saw her, he smiled, a small, genuine curve of lips that made her chest tighten in ways she did not understand. Good morning, he said. Ready for another day of science and adventure? Lyra inclined her head. We will continue today's studies focusing on your physiological and emotional responses to tactile interaction. Alex raised an eyebrow. Tactile interaction? You mean touch tests? Yes, Lyra said, her voice calm but her antennae twitching slightly. Touch was foreign to Zarathians in emotional terms. They used it only for function or protocol. But humans infused it with meaning, and she was beginning to feel the effects. The lab was prepared for the exercises. Devices measured pressure, skin response, and micro-muscle activity. But Lyra had adjusted the parameters. Today's experiment would be less mechanical and more personal. She would observe Alex's natural responses to gestures and gentle contact. Alex approached the first device, glancing at Lyra with curiosity. I hope this won't hurt, he said. Pain is not the objective, Lyra replied. Reaction and response are. As Alex placed his hands on the device, Lyra guided his movements. She noted every reaction, tiny shifts in weight, muscle tension, pulse fluctuations. But she also noticed her own body responding in ways that no instrument could record. When their fingers brushed lightly, a subtle warmth traveled through her, an unfamiliar energy she could not explain. Alex caught her glance. You're watching closely, he said with a teasing smile. Are you learning my secrets? Lyra stiffened slightly, her training insisting on professionalism. Observation is required for accuracy. Every detail is important, Alex chuckled. Fair enough. But humans are more than details, you know. We're unpredictable, emotional. Sometimes you have to feel things to understand them. Lyra's sensors recorded the change in his tone, the warmth in his words, and the slight curve of his smile. She understood the logic of what he said, but she also felt something beyond logic, an urge to reach out, to touch, to connect. After the tactile exercises, Alex asked to explore the lower research biomes. Lyra hesitated. It was unusual to allow a subject such freedom, but she sensed that observing him in a more natural environment could yield insights. And perhaps, she admitted silently, she wanted to be near him. The biomes were alive with motion. Alien plants shifted slightly as they passed, and small creatures peeked from hidden corners. Alex moved carefully, crouching to observe a cluster of glowing fungi. His fingers brushed gently across the delicate surfaces, and he spoke softly, almost to himself. These are beautiful, he said. Even if they're not like earth plants, I can feel something alive in them. Lyra observed him closely. Humans did not just see, they felt. Every movement carried intention, curiosity, and empathy. She felt a pull toward him she could not name, a mixture of fascination and something more primal. You seem connected to them, she said carefully. Your interaction is more emotional than we anticipated. Alex glanced at her. I connect with most things. People, plants, even strange alien life. Touch, observation, and attention. These are ways we understand the world. Lyra made a note, but she also felt a wave of warmth in her chest. The pull was stronger than before. She wanted to be near him, to share in his observations, to experience what he experienced. As they walked deeper into the biome, they reached a small pool of bioluminescent water. The surface shimmered in shades of green and blue, reflecting the twin suns above. Alex knelt and dipped his fingers into the water, letting it flow over his hands. Humans find simple things comforting, he said. A gentle touch, water, warmth. Even small gestures matter. Lyra's chest tightened. She knelt beside him, careful to maintain distance. Yet she could not stop herself from observing every movement, every ripple in the water, every expression on his face. Humans conveyed meaning through gestures, and she realized she wanted to feel the meaning, not just study it. Later, back in the lab, Lyra introduced more interactive exercises. She explained each step, guiding Alex's hands through precise movements and observing his reactions. But this time she added subtle touches, lightly brushing his hand, adjusting his posture gently, and noting the energy that flowed between them. Alex noticed, but he did not react with surprise. Instead, he smiled knowingly. You're learning something about humans that your instruments can't measure, he said. Lyra's sensors recorded increases in her pulse and energy readings. She tried to remain professional, but she could not ignore the connection forming between them. Her fascination was no longer purely scientific. "You mean this?" she asked, her voice soft. "Yes," Alex replied gently. "Connection isn't just data. It's trust, understanding, and empathy. Sometimes it's a touch, a glance, or just being near someone. You can feel it even if you can't explain it." Lyra studied him. His words were simple, but the meaning resonated deeply. For the first time, she questioned her own discipline. Observation alone was no longer sufficient. She wanted to experience, to understand firsthand. As the day ended, a sudden storm swept across the planet. Rain lashed against the observation deck windows, and the station's energy shields glowed under the pressure. Lyra and Alex worked together to stabilize the systems, his instincts complementing her training. In the chaos, a piece of equipment fell dangerously close to Alex. Without thinking, Lyra reached out and grabbed his arm, pulling him back. Their hands lingered for a moment longer than necessary, and the warmth of his skin against hers sent a shock through her body. Alex looked at her, concern in his eyes. "Are you okay?" he asked softly. Lyra's chest tightened. She nodded, but she could not speak. The pull between them was undeniable. Her mind told her to remain professional, but her body betrayed her. After the storm passed, they stood together on the observation deck, wet and tired, watching the twin moons rise over the alien forests. Lyra felt a strange peace mingled with a longing she could not name. "You humans are complicated," she said quietly. Alex smiled. "I guess we are. But maybe that's the point. Feeling, connecting, caring, it's messy, but it's real." Lyra recorded the statement in her notes, but she also recorded something else. A feeling she could not measure, an energy between them that was not data, but undeniable. As night fell, Lyra returned to her quarters. She reviewed the day's recordings, noting every micro-expression, every heartbeat fluctuation, every subtle movement. But her thoughts kept returning to Alex, the curve of his smile, the warmth in his touch, the gentle patience he showed in every interaction. She realized with both excitement and fear that her fascination was no longer purely scientific. She wanted more than observation. She wanted understanding, closeness, and touch. For the first time in her life, Lyra Vela felt something she could not explain or categorize, and she knew that tomorrow the study would continue, but so would something far more dangerous for a scientist: desire. The stars above Valeera 3 twinkled quietly, as if aware of the new path Lyra had taken. She closed her eyes, feeling the echo of Alex's presence, and wondered if she was ready for what was coming next. The morning light on Valeera 3 filtered softly through the observation deck, casting patterns across the floor that shifted with the movement of the twin suns. Lyra Vela stood near the console, her multi-limbed frame poised and precise. Yet beneath the calm exterior, her mind was restless. The past days had blurred the lines between study and fascination. Her scientific curiosity about Alex Mercer had deepened into something she could not fully categorize, something far more personal. Alex entered the lab with his usual casual stride, carrying a small data tablet. "Morning, Dr. Vela. Ready for another day of discovery?" he asked, his dark eyes sparkling with humor and curiosity. Lyra inclined her head. "We will continue today's tests, focusing on interaction and response under stress conditions. Observation will remain essential." Alex's grin widened. "Stress tests, huh? I hope I can still surprise you." Lyra's antennae twitched slightly, a subtle sign of her inner tension. She reminded herself that he was a subject, not a companion. Professionalism had to prevail. Yet when Alex moved closer to help calibrate the instruments, she felt the pull again, the warmth in his presence, the subtle energy that seemed to flow between them whenever their hands brushed. The first exercise involved problem-solving under pressure. Small environmental anomalies were simulated within the lab: fluctuating temperatures, shifting gravity fields, and unexpected equipment malfunctions. Alex adapted instinctively. He manipulated consoles, recalibrated energy flows, and guided Lyra through the proper sequences with calm efficiency. Lyra recorded every micro-expression, noting his decision-making process and physiological reactions. But her own reactions were unusual. Her chest tightened, her pulse quickened, and her antennae twitched in ways her training could not explain. Every time Alex's hand touched hers to guide a movement, a spark of unfamiliar energy shot through her body. "You handle stress differently than most species," Lyra remarked, striving to maintain composure. Alex shrugged lightly. "We humans adapt. We think, feel, and act I guess that gives us an edge in chaos. Lyra studied him closely. His words were simple, yet they carried weight. Humans blended intellect and emotion seamlessly. They did not separate feeling from action as Zorathians did. That blending, she realized, was part of what drew her to him. As the morning passed, Lyra guided Alex through more tactile exercises. Today, she allowed a little more freedom, encouraging him to interact naturally with devices and environmental elements rather than following rigid instructions. Humans learn through experience, she explained. Your responses to touch and contact provide insight into adaptation and communication. Observe, react, and respond naturally. Alex nodded. Got it. Let's see how this goes. Their hands brushed frequently during the exercises. Each time, Lyra felt something she had never experienced, a mixture of warmth, energy, and unexplainable anticipation. Her mind cataloged every physiological reaction, but her heart, if it could be called that, responded independently. She felt drawn to him, as though some invisible thread connected them. During a break, Alex suggested a walk through the outer observation decks. Lyra hesitated. Officially, it was unnecessary, but something within her urged her to accept. Perhaps it was the quiet hope of experiencing the world through his perspective. Or perhaps it was the growing awareness that her feelings for him were real. Outside, the twin suns glimmered over Velera III's forests, highlighting the alien flora and colors she had never noticed before. Alex moved with ease, crouching to examine a cluster of bioluminescent plants. His fingers brushed the leaves lightly, and he whispered observations under his breath. See the patterns? He said softly. They're not just random. There's balance, symmetry, and maybe even intention in the way life grows. It feels alive. Lyra watched him closely, noting his gestures, the tilt of his head, the softness in his voice. Her scientific mind cataloged it, but her emotions cataloged something else entirely. A pull, a longing, a curiosity she could not contain. You observe carefully, Alex said, looking at her, but sometimes feeling is as important as seeing. You notice patterns in the world, but do you notice the energy between people? Lyra's antennae twitched nervously. Zorathians observe energy, but human emotional energy is complex. It is difficult to measure accurately. Alex stepped closer. Maybe it's not about measurement. Maybe it's about trust, understanding, and connection. Sometimes you just experience it. Lyra felt the truth in his words. Her curiosity was no longer purely scientific. She wanted to feel, to connect, to experience the touch, warmth, and closeness that humans naturally shared. But she resisted the thought. She was a scientist. Observation must remain objective. The storm came without warning. Strong winds swept across the station, rattling the outer walls and flashing lightning across the alien skies. Emergency alarms sounded, and Lyra and Alex rushed to stabilize the systems. The station shuddered as gravity fields fluctuated, and energy flows became unstable. Follow me, Alex instructed, moving swiftly to a console. His hands guided hers, adjusting controls and recalibrating energy channels. Lyra's pulse quickened, not from danger but from the contact. Every touch carried weight beyond the mechanics of the work. Suddenly, a support beam cracked, sending debris toward Alex. Without thinking, Lyra lunged forward, grabbing his arm and pulling him to safety. Their bodies pressed together briefly, and she felt an intense surge of energy, emotional, physical, and undeniable. Alex looked at her, concern and understanding in his eyes. Are you okay? He asked softly. Lyra's chest tightened. She nodded, unable to speak. For the first time, she acknowledged it. She wanted him not as a subject, but as a presence, a companion, a human connection. After the storm, the station settled into calm. The twin moons rose over the forest below, casting pale light across the observation deck. Lyra and Alex stood together, silent, catching their breath and watching the serene alien landscape. You humans, you surprise me, Lyra said quietly. Even under pressure, you adapt, you respond, and you connect in ways I cannot explain. Alex smiled gently. That's what we do. We feel, we care, and we trust. Maybe that's messy compared to your science, but it works. Lyra's chest tightened again, and she realized she no longer wanted to keep her distance. Observation was no longer enough. She wanted to experience, to share, to touch and feel in ways her species had never permitted. Alex, she said softly, hesitating. There is something I must acknowledge. He turned to her, calm and patient. What is it? She swallowed, trying to find words. I am no longer observing you as a subject. I want to understand you in ways beyond measurement. I want to experience connection. With you, Alex's eyes softened. Lyra, humans experience connection through trust, presence, and sometimes touch. Feeling is not weakness, it is how we understand the world and each other. Lyra's antennae twitched in uncertainty. She had spent her life categorizing data, controlling energy, and observing life scientifically. Now in the presence of Alex, she felt something unquantifiable, something both terrifying and exhilarating. Then, "How do we begin?" she asked, her voice almost a whisper. Alex extended his hand. "Step by step. Touch, presence, understanding. We explore together. No rush, no protocol, just being." Lyra hesitated, then placed her hand lightly in his. The warmth was immediate, flowing through her limbs, igniting a spark she could not explain. It was unlike anything she had ever felt, pure, simple, and real. They stood together on the observation deck, hands touching lightly, watching the moons cast their glow over the alien forests. Lyra realized that science could catalog the mind, the body, even energy flows, but it could not capture the essence of connection, the warmth of trust, or the subtle resonance of human touch. For the first time, she embraced it. She no longer wished to remain a detached observer. She wanted to experience, to learn, and to connect with Alex, with life, and with something deeper than data or protocol. The stars above Velyra 3 twinkled silently, bearing witness to the beginning of an emotional journey that neither science nor logic could contain. And as Lyra felt Alex's hand in hers, she understood. Some discoveries were beyond measurement, beyond observation, and beyond understanding. They were felt, and she was ready to feel. The morning light on Velyra 3 filtered softly through the observation deck, illuminating the alien forests below. Lyra Vela stood beside Alex Mercer, their hands still lightly touching. For the first time, she felt no barrier between duty and desire. Observation had ended. Experience had begun. She had spent her life cataloging data. But now she realized some things could not be measured. Some things could only be felt. Alex looked at her, his dark eyes filled with curiosity and warmth. "You're different," he said softly. "I can see it. You're not just observing anymore. You're here, with me." Lyra's antennae twitched, a sign of nervous excitement. I am learning that some connections cannot be quantified. Observation is no longer sufficient." Alex smiled gently. "Humans understand that. We feel, we trust, and we act on what we feel. You don't have to analyze everything." Lyra studied him. His words were simple, yet carried truth. Humans blended thought and feeling seamlessly. They acted with intuition, empathy, and courage. She had studied countless species, yet none had touched her so profoundly. "Then, I wish to learn," she said quietly, "to experience connection beyond observation." Alex reached out, brushing a stray lock of hair from her face. The touch was light, tender, and deliberate. Lyra felt warmth spread through her chest, a pulse of energy she could not explain. It was not just the physical contact, it was the presence, the attention, the trust behind it. "You see," Alex said softly, "connection is more than touch. It's presence, understanding, and care. Feel it, and you'll understand." Lyra closed her eyes, letting the sensation flow through her. She felt grounded, yet exhilarated. Observation had been her world, controlled and precise. Now with Alex, she felt alive in ways no instrument could measure. The station's systems beeped softly, signaling routine updates, but Lyra ignored them. Nothing was more important than this moment. The first experience of connection beyond study. "Do you feel it too?" she asked, opening her eyes to meet his gaze. Alex nodded. "Every moment, you're incredible, Lyra. Not just your mind, but your heart, your presence. Humans call it resonance. We feel it with people, places, even moments. Right now, I feel it with you." Lyra's chest tightened and her antennae twitched in a mixture of excitement and hesitation. She had studied energy, physiology, and emotion, yet nothing in her training could explain this. She could only feel it, and she wanted more. "Then, let us experience it," she said, her voice steady despite the flutter in her chest. Alex smiled, and together they stepped into the observation deck's central area, where the twin suns cast golden light across the floor. He reached for her hand again, guiding it to his chest just above the steady beat of his heart. Lyra felt the rhythm, steady and strong. It was unlike any energy she had measured, organic, alive, and comforting. She placed her other hand over his, and for the first time she let herself simply feel. No calculations, no measurements, no observation. Just presence. You are remarkable, she whispered, her voice barely audible. Not as a subject, but as someone I wish to understand fully. Alex's smile deepened. Lyra, humans share themselves through trust and presence. You don't have to fear it. Connection is not danger. It's understanding. They stood together in silence, hands intertwined, absorbing the quiet beauty of the alien forests below and the soft glow of the twin moons above. Lyra realized that observation had brought them together, but connection had transformed her understanding. Humans did not just survive, they thrived through relationships, through empathy, through touch and presence. I've never felt anything like this, Lyra admitted, her voice trembling slightly. Observation has limits, but what we are experiencing, it surpasses all data. Alex nodded. That's humanity. We measure some things, but the most important things, trust, care, connection, they can only be felt. Lyra tilted her head, considering his words. She had spent centuries cataloging life, yet humans were teaching her something no instrument could capture, the essence of experience. It was chaotic, unpredictable, and profoundly beautiful. Then, we continue, she said. Not as observer and subject, but as companions together. Alex's eyes lit up. I like the sound of that. The day passed slowly, their interactions a mixture of exploration, learning, and gentle connection. They moved through the station, examining alien plants, observing bioluminescent fungi, and discussing the subtle energies of life. Every touch, glance, and shared moment deepened the bond forming between them. At one point, Alex guided Lyra's hand to a delicate plant. Feel it, he said softly. Not just with your sensors, but with presence. Understand it through interaction. Lyra placed her fingers lightly on the plant, closing her eyes. She felt its subtle energy, the pulse of life running through it, and for the first time she realized that life was not merely data. It was experience, connection, and resonance. She opened her eyes and Alex smiled knowingly. You understand now, he said. Not just what it is, but what it feels like. Lyra nodded, a mixture of awe and exhilaration filling her. She had studied life, energy, and physiology, yet humans had taught her the most important lesson: to feel, to connect, and to trust. As evening approached, the twin moons rose, bathing the observation deck in soft silver light. Lyra and Alex stood together, their hands intertwined, gazing at the alien forest below. Lyra, Alex said softly, connection is a choice. To experience it, you must let go of control and embrace presence. Do you choose to do that with me? Lyra's chest tightened, but she smiled. Yes, I choose to experience connection, presence, and understanding with you. Alex's smile deepened. He stepped closer, bringing his forehead gently to hers. Then we begin, he whispered. In that moment, Lyra felt a surge of energy unlike anything she had ever measured. It was warmth, trust, and presence, all intertwined. She felt alive, whole, and profoundly connected. Observation had ended. Experience had begun. They spent the night exploring the simple joys of presence, shared silence, gentle guidance, and the subtle warmth of each other's touch. Every gesture, no matter how small, carried meaning. They laughed softly, spoke in hushed tones, and reveled in the quiet beauty of their bond. Lyra realized that humans were extraordinary, not because of strength or speed, but because of their capacity to connect. Their resilience, empathy, and ability to trust created a depth of experience no data could replicate. And now, she had become part of that depth. As dawn approached, Lyra and Alex stood on the observation deck, watching the first light of the suns touch the alien forests. She placed her hand lightly on his arm, feeling the steady beat of his presence. Alex, she whispered, I understand now. Humans do not just survive, they experience, connect, and thrive. You have shown me something beyond science, beyond observation, beyond measurement. Alex smiled, his hand covering hers. And you, Lyra, have shown me that understanding can be shared not just through touch or presence, but through trust, patience, and care. Together, we experience life fully. Lyra's antennae twitched in quiet joy. She had learned the limits of observation, the beauty of presence, and the profound strength of connection. Alex had shown her that some discoveries were beyond instruments, beyond calculation and beyond logic. They could only be felt. The stars above Valera 3 shimmered, silent witnesses to the bond forming between a human and a Zorathian scientist. In that quiet, glowing space, Lyra realized the full truth. She had come to study him, but she had found far more. She had found connection, warmth, and the indescribable beauty of human presence. And in that connection, she was no longer merely a scientist. She was part of something greater, a shared experience, a mutual understanding, and a bond that neither data nor observation could ever define. Lyra leaned closer, resting her hand gently against Alex's chest. "I am grateful," she whispered. "Not as a scientist, but as someone who feels." Alex smiled softly, bringing his hand to hers. "And I am grateful too, for the chance to share, to connect, and to be understood. Together." The twin suns rose higher, casting golden light over the alien forests. Lyra and Alex stood hand in hand, silent, present, and profoundly aware of each other. Observation had ended. Experience had begun. Connection had been made. And for the first time, Lyra realized that some discoveries, the deepest, most essential ones, could only be experienced with another living being.